Welcome, friend. I'm James, your host, and today we're diving into another captivating episode. Grab a drink, get comfortable, and get ready for a powerful story that's sure to resonate. If something hits home, share your thoughts in the comments. Let's dive in.
I 35 cheated on my wife 36F. She left without a word, now she's married and pregnant, and I'm shattered. How can I get her back? I'm sitting alone in my dark apartment in Los Angeles. The city lights twinkling like distant stars through the window, but it feels like I'm living in a black hole of despair. 2 years ago, I shattered my life and the life of the woman I loved with a moment of weakness. I cheated on my wife, the woman who stood by me through thick and thin, the one who made my life feel complete. She was everything to me, the heart and soul of our home, and now I'm left with the hollow echo of what we once had. Every corner of this apartment is a reminder of our life together, from the mismatched cushions on the couch to the framed pictures of us smiling at happier times. I can still hear her laughter ringing in my ears, a haunting melody that now feels like a distant memory, as if I'm trapped in a time loop where I can only replay our happiest moments. It's surreal to think that someone so integral to my life has been erased, leaving behind only shadows of who we used to be. My heart feels heavy, and I often find myself staring blankly at the walls, wishing I could turn back time and erase that fateful mistake. It was a sweltering summer afternoon when everything changed. I came home, the air heavy with the scent of jasmine from the neighbor's garden, and I sensed something was off. The sunlight filtered through the curtains, but it felt muted, like a dream slowly fading. I noticed that the familiar sights of our shared life, her favorite mug on the counter, the photos from our travels hanging on the walls, were gone. The very essence of our shared history felt stripped away. My heart raced as I searched the house, the empty rooms amplifying my anxiety. The silence was deafening. It was as if the house itself mourned the loss of what had been. I could almost hear our shared laughter echoing in the distance, a ghostly reminder of what once was. Finally, I stumbled upon a note on the kitchen table. My hands trembled as I picked it up, the paper feeling like a weight on my heart. It was a divorce paper, signed and official. Beneath it was a handwritten note that cut deeper than any knife. "This is what you do with cheaters." I collapsed into a chair, my vision blurring as panic took over. How could she do this? How could she leave without giving me a chance to explain? The reality hit me like a cold wave. The love of my life was gone, and I was left grappling with the consequences of my actions. As the days turned into weeks, I became a ghost in my own life. I moved through the motions, but nothing felt real anymore. My friends tried to reach out, but I was too deep in my sorrow to engage in their offers of distraction. Each time my phone buzzed, my heart would leap, hoping it was her, only to crash when I saw it was just another spam message. I reached out to her lawyer, hoping to understand, but he merely informed me that she didn't want to see me. It felt like a slap in the face. I fought back tears of rage and sorrow, but he remained unyielding. "You should get your own lawyer," he advised, as if that would magically make everything better. I couldn't accept it. 10 years of love and companionship, was I really going to let that go so easily? The reality of losing her settled heavily on my chest, constricting my breath as I realized I was powerless to change the past. I was living in a constant state of longing, memories of our evenings together replaying like a broken record in my mind. Every place I went reminded me of her, from the little cafe we used to visit to the park where we spent lazy Sunday afternoons. I felt like I was a ship lost at sea, tossed around by waves of regret and longing. The divorce was finalized, but it felt like my heart had been ripped out of my chest. I wanted to scream, to shake her and tell her how much I regretted my mistake, how much I missed her smile, her laughter. Each night I lay in bed, haunted by memories of us, her voice singing softly in the kitchen, the way her eyes sparkled when she talked about her dreams. I felt like a shell of the man I once was, consumed by guilt and loneliness. I thought I could drown my sorrows in work, throwing myself into projects that once excited me, but even that offered no respite. The joy of creating something meaningful faded into the background as I found myself staring blankly at the walls, my mind flooded with what ifs. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had wasted the most precious thing in my life, and I was left with nothing but a bitter taste of regret. I started avoiding social situations. Every gathering felt like a reminder of my failure. Friends would laugh and celebrate milestones while I stood silently in the corner, feeling like an imposter in a world where love still thrived. Then came the tipping point. After months of suffocating grief, I began therapy. My therapist was kind but firm, focusing on helping me move forward, encouraging me to meet new people and try to find joy again. But all I wanted was her. The thought of dating made me nauseous. The idea of intimacy felt like a betrayal. I often sat in those therapy sessions, my mind wandering to her, the way she would smile when she saw me walk through the door, the way her laughter could light up the darkest room. The idea of being with anyone else felt impossible, as if I were trying to replace a masterpiece with a cheap imitation. I was trapped in a whirlwind of emotions, clinging to the hope that one day she would forgive me, while simultaneously grappling with the reality that she may never want to see me again. I wanted to believe that if I worked on myself, she might one day recognize the man she fell in love with. But doubt gnawed at me constantly. What if I was too late? Everything changed a few days ago. I was having a few drinks with my friend Nick, drowning my sorrows in liquid courage. The whiskey burned as it slid down my throat, but it was nothing compared to the ache in my heart. As we sat on my worn-out couch, the conversation turned to her. I started pouring my heart out, recounting every painful detail of our relationship and my betrayal. Nick, in his blunt but well-meaning way, said something that sent chills down my spine. "You should put more effort into getting over her. She's moved on and is probably happy without you." My heart dropped. How did he know? I pressed him, my mind racing, desperate for information. When I finally got him to talk, the truth shattered me. "She's been living in Norway for a year," he said, avoiding my gaze. "She got married to some guy, and she's pregnant." The world spun around me. I felt like I had been hit by a truck. My mind raced with questions. How could she? While I was drowning in sorrow, she was living a life I had imagined for us, getting married, starting a family, laughing without me. The betrayal stung more than I could bear. How could she get pregnant after all the struggles we faced together? My mind spiraled into a dark place. Was it revenge? Was she just using this new guy as a safety net? I couldn't comprehend it. Each new detail was like a fresh wound, reopening the scars I thought had begun to heal. While I was drowning in sorrow, she was living a life I had imagined for us, getting married, starting a family, laughing without me. The betrayal stung more than I could bear. How could she? All those nights spent crying, all the moments of wishing she would come back, and here she was, across the ocean, building a life without me. I felt rage boiling inside me, mingled with heartbreak. How could she get pregnant after all the struggles we faced together? My mind spiraled into a dark place. Was it revenge? Was she just using this new guy as a safety net? I couldn't comprehend it. Every question swirled in my mind like a storm, battering me with doubt and confusion. I wrestled with thoughts of her moving on so effortlessly while I felt like I was stuck in quicksand, slowly sinking into despair with every passing day. As much as I tried to convince myself that I needed to let go, I felt a desperate need for closure, to understand how we had gone from planning a future together to her building a life with someone else. My instinct screamed at me to reach out to her, to confront her, to find out what happened. But how? I had no idea where she lived, no contact information. She had vanished like a ghost. I even considered flying to Norway, hunting her down. But how would I find her? I didn't know her address or her new life. My mind was a whirlwind of desperation. I could picture her laughter echoing in my head, her smile lighting up her face as she talked about their future together. In my heart, I still longed for her. Even pregnant, I felt a pull, an overwhelming desire to explain, to apologize, to make her see that I was still the man she fell in love with. Just a broken one, trying to find his way back. I refused to believe that our love could just vanish like that. After everything we had shared, didn't I deserve a chance to fight for us? I was left with a tumultuous mix of emotions, hope, regret, anger, and a deep-seated sorrow that weighed heavily on my chest. Every day was a struggle, a reminder of what I had lost, and the thought of her moving on without me was unbearable. I often envisioned her life in Norway, surrounded by new friends and experiences that I could never share. I imagined her waking up in a cozy apartment with this new man, their laughter filling the spaces where our memories used to thrive. The idea gnawed at me, and each time it crossed my mind, I felt like I was suffocating. I spent countless nights tossing and turning, replaying our last moments together in my mind. I could still see her face, the hurt and betrayal in her eyes when she found out about my infidelity. I had broken her trust in a way that felt irreparable, and now I was haunted by the consequences. I wondered if she ever thought of me, if she ever felt a flicker of what we once shared. Did she regret her decision, or was she genuinely happy? The uncertainty drove me further into despair, and I found myself daydreaming about confronting her, begging her for one last chance to explain myself. In my darkest moments, I sought solace in my therapist's office. I would pour out my heart, sharing the chaotic whirlwind of emotions that kept me up at night. My therapist would listen patiently, encouraging me to explore my feelings without judgment. He reminded me that healing takes time and that it was okay to grieve the loss of our relationship. He offered tools to help me cope, journaling my feelings, practicing mindfulness, and even contemplating the idea of eventually moving on. But every time he suggested I start dating again, I recoiled in horror. How could I possibly connect with someone else when my heart was still tangled up in the remnants of my past? I often left those sessions feeling more confused than when I entered, wondering if I would ever be free of the pain that had consumed me. Then, in a moment of clarity, I realized I had to take control of my life. I started focusing on self-improvement. I hit the gym more often, trying to channel my pain into something constructive. The endorphins would lift my mood, even if only temporarily. I began cooking again, experimenting with new recipes that I used to make for us. Each dish was a bittersweet reminder of her, but I also found a sense of comfort in rekindling my passion for culinary arts. I poured my heart into everything I created, hoping that one day I would be able to share it with someone special again, whether that was her or someone new. Then came that fateful day when I stumbled upon a post on social media. I was scrolling mindlessly, trying to distract myself, when I saw a picture that stopped me in my tracks. It was a photograph of her, glowing and radiant, cradling a baby bump in a sunlit park in Norway. She looked happy, genuinely happy, and standing beside her was a man whose hand rested protectively on her waist. In that moment, my heart shattered into a million pieces. The caption read, "Feeling blessed and excited for this new chapter." I couldn't breathe. My hands shook, and I felt the bile rise in my throat. Tears streamed down my face as I realized that this was it. She had moved on, and there was nothing I could do about it. The pain was overwhelming, like a tidal wave crashing over me, dragging me down into the depths of despair. I felt a storm of emotions rage within me: jealousy, regret, anger, and a sense of helplessness. I wanted to scream at the injustice of it all. How could she so easily let go of what we had? How could she build a new life without me? I spent hours staring at that post, unable to look away, yet feeling like I was staring at a ghost. Each moment I spent in that state only deepened my resolve to find her, to get answers, to at least understand how we had gone from being so in love to complete strangers. It took days for the numbness to wear off. I barely left my apartment, subsisting on takeout and beer, losing myself in old movies and memories. Friends texted, concerned about my absence from social gatherings, but I couldn't face them. I felt like a fraud, like I was living a lie. Every time someone asked about my ex-wife, it was as if they were opening a wound that had just begun to scab over. I couldn't bear the thought of recounting the story of our downfall, and I certainly couldn't stand the pity in their eyes. But I knew I couldn't stay in this state forever. The more I wallowed in my despair, the more I realized I was becoming the very thing I had feared, the man who let one mistake define him. I needed to take action, to reclaim my life from the clutches of my heartbreak. So, after days of contemplation, I made a plan. I would gather every ounce of courage I had left and find a way to reach out to her. My first step was to try and find her family. They had always been supportive of our marriage, and I knew they cared for me, despite the distance my actions had created. I reached out to mutual acquaintances, hoping to gather enough information to make contact. I learned that her parents had moved back to their hometown, and I hesitated for days before finally dialing her mother's number. My heart raced, a mix of dread and hope swirling inside me. When her mother picked up, I introduced myself, trying to sound composed. The conversation was awkward at first, filled with pauses and uncertainties, but as I spoke, I felt a flicker of connection, a thread of the past weaving its way through my words. "Is she happy?" I finally asked, my voice trembling. Her mother paused, and for a moment, I thought I heard a crack in her voice. "She is, adjusting to her new life," she replied carefully. I could hear the unspoken words in her tone, the hesitance that perhaps things weren't as perfect as they seemed. I felt a surge of determination. If I could just find a way to communicate with her, maybe there was still a chance. With that small glimmer of hope, I took to the internet. I created new social media accounts, determined to keep my identity hidden while I gathered information. I combed through her posts, her friends' comments, anything that would give me insight into her life in Norway. I was stalking, I knew that. But it felt like the only way to stay connected to her, even if from a distance. I saw photos of her and her husband, snippets of their life, and each image struck me like a blow. But amidst the pictures of their happy moments, I also spotted glimpses of her vulnerability. Posts about missing home, about feeling overwhelmed with the impending arrival of their child. These glimpses fueled my desire to reach out even more. I longed to be there for her, to tell her I understood her struggles, to remind her of the love we shared. I convinced myself that if she could just see that I was still the same person who loved her fiercely, she might consider talking to me. I drafted message after message, pouring my heart out in a way that felt raw and honest. I poured out my feelings, explaining how I had changed, how I had grown through my pain. Each time I hit send, my heart raced with anticipation, but after a few seconds of silence, I would feel that familiar pit of despair settle back in when I remembered she might never see them. Finally, I decided it was time to confront my fears head on. I booked a flight to Norway, feeling a mix of exhilaration and terror. I had no idea where she lived, but I was determined to find her. I spent hours researching the city, mapping out potential neighborhoods where she might be living. With each passing moment, I felt more alive, more in control of my destiny. I imagined what it would be like to see her again, to look into her eyes and tell her how deeply I regretted my mistake. As the plane touched down in Oslo, my heart raced with a combination of hope and dread. I felt like a stranger in a foreign land, and yet every step I took felt like a step toward redemption. The city was beautiful, filled with stunning architecture and vibrant street life, but my focus was singular. I needed to find her. I reached out to her friends and family, hoping someone might offer a clue about her whereabouts. The days turned into a whirlwind of searching and asking questions, fueled by an unwavering determination. I faced dead ends and awkward conversations, but I refused to give up. I was relentless in my pursuit, each moment edging closer to the possibility of reconnecting with the woman who had once been my everything. It felt like I was living in a movie, one where the protagonist embarks on a quest to win back the heart of their true love, and I was prepared to fight for my place in her life once again. Then, after what felt like an eternity, I finally found her. I learned that she was living in a charming little neighborhood, one filled with cozy cafes and bustling markets. My heart raced as I approached her apartment building, feeling the weight of my past bearing down on me. I stood outside for what felt like hours, summoning the courage to ring her doorbell. I could imagine her surprised face, the myriad of emotions that would flicker across it as she opened the door. Would she see the man she once loved, or just a reminder of her pain? With shaking hands, I finally pressed the doorbell, and the chime echoed in my ears.